لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we'll continue where we left off and we will keep it brief. We were talking last class about Surah Bayyinah and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this chapter in Medina. It is considered to be a Madani chapter, and it talks about the Ahlul Kitab, those who received the book, the guidance, the knowledge, yet when the Prophet ﷺ came to them to reaffirm what they already knew from the truth, many of them did not accept that. And one interesting thing is that throughout the Quran, time and time again, the majority of the chapters, we are always reminded that this message is not a new message. When Allah Azza wa Jalla says, هَذَا نَذِيرٌ مِنَ النُّذُرِ الْأُولَى, that this is a warning from the warnings that have come in the past of old. إِنَّ هَذَا لَفِي الصُّحُفِ الْأُولَى صُحُفِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى, that these scriptures, the Quran and all these stories of the message of Tawheed is the same message that you find in the scriptures of Musa alayhi salam and the guidance and revelation that was given to Ibrahim and so on. So this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of the responsibility that Ahlul Kitab had. Because when you receive knowledge, you are held accountable to that knowledge, more so than someone who does not know. At the very most, we can remind a person and say, maybe you did not know better, but now you know better, so do not make that same mistake. And this is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes in many chapters about the Ahlul Kitab in particular, because they knew the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yet because of some different reasons, some of them they wanted to cling on to that authority, that power. Others were jealous because the prophets before that, the majority had come from their own people, and now they had an Arab, illiterate Arab who did not know how to read or write, that was the chosen one. Not only was he a prophet, but he was Khatam Anbiya, that he was the seal of all prophets. And this was too much for many of them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in here in the Quran, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. The only thing that they were commanded to do was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with that ikhlas, meaning to worship Him completely, hunafa. This is the religion of Ibrahim, like we explained in the last class, meaning that a person is completely focused on the tawheed and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is far removed from the shirk that people might commit. If you remember the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, not only did he believe in Allah, but he actually took the step to leave his people, to leave the place of shirk, and he stood very firm for Tawheed. وَيُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُ الزَّكَاةَ. And again, these two things are often mentioned together, and when it's about establishing the Salah, that is the word that is used, and the Zakah, these two are pillars in our religion, and to such an extent that the scholars in Islam have said, if a person denies Zakah or denies Salah, then they are no longer Muslims. وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. And this is the religion that is al-mustaqim, the straight religion without any i'wijaj, without any crookedness in it. And again, we said that this is the beauty of our religion, that there is no contradictions. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, لَا يَأْتِيهِ الْبَاطِلُ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَلَا مِنْ خَلْفِهِ. That the Quran, no falsehood can approach the Quran. Why? تَنْزِيلٌ مِنْ حَكِيمٍ حَمِيدٍ. That it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one with the wisdom and the one that is praised. So now, you have the final three verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ وَالْمُشْرِكِينَ. Those who have disbelieved from the Ahlul Kitab and the Mushrikeen. The interesting thing here, amongst many things, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those who have disbelieved from the Ahlul Kitab. This leads us to understand that not everyone from the Ahlul Kitab disbelieved, especially those who believed and acted according to the revelation that they had before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So those who followed Musa alayhi salam, they were Muslims. Those who followed Isa alayhi salam, they were Muslims. But it was only when the final revelation came and they had a choice to make that they became disbelievers in the whole message completely. And from the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that when Allah Azza wa Jal describes the bad aspects of the Ahlul Kitab, Allah Azza wa Jal does not just say that all of them were bad. Allah Azza wa Jal is just. And in many places in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal says, no, there are min Ahlul Kitabi ummatun qa'imatun yatluna ayatillah, that from the Ahlul Kitab themselves, some of them were not corrupt. That they were the ones who would establish the salah, they were the ones that would read, they were the ones who would dedicate themselves to prayer. So we understand it in the right light, because there's other verses that sometimes causes confusion when Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئُونَ, and so on, and speaking about how they will end up in Jannah. And that confusion is not because there's confusion in the Quran, but it is having that understanding that those who were Christians before the message of the Prophet ﷺ, they will be in Jannah. And those who follow the message of Musa alayhi salam, the Yahud, they will be in Jannah. But with the revelation of the Prophet ﷺ, that choice was something that many of them opposed. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, that they will be in Jahannam, and Jahannam, as we know, is hellfire. And subhanAllah, when Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the hellfire, Jahannam, Allah Azza wa Jalla makes a balance so that it balances fear with hope, that you know there's consequences for your actions. And at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives hope. So you see Jannah and Nar being mentioned the same amount of times in the Quran. And the scary thing, Jahannam itself has been described as a living thing that talks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Quran itself, when Allah Azza wa Jalla asks Jahannam on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Halim Talat, have you become full? Are you completely full? And Jahannam responds back, Hal min mazid. So Jahannam is a creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to punish those who went against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here it says, Khalidina fiha, that they will remain in there forever. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ شَرُّ الْبَرِيَّةِ, that they are from the worst of creation. And this is in opposition, or it is the opposite of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what the intent of the creation of mankind was. When Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla created Adam and mankind and fashioned them in the best way. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. And then they went down, bringing that upon themselves, and they became from the worst of people. So who are these people that are being described as Sharrul Bariyah? Not just evil, but Sharrul Bariyah, the worst of all creation. It goes back to that beginning when we talked about people who received the revelation and went against it. And this is why in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ we find out that the first person who enters Jahannam, wal-'iyadu billah, it is not Fir'aun, it is not these other people, not even Iblis, but the hadith mentions that the first person is alim, a scholar who did not act according to his knowledge. An alim, a scholar who did not act according to his knowledge, but in fact they did the opposite. They did the opposite. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. Those who believe and do good deeds. And you will notice throughout the Quran there is always a link between Iman, which is also linked with knowledge and action. So the two go hand in hand. If you have knowledge, there should be action. And if you have action, make sure that that action is based upon knowledge. Because if you have one and not the other, then again you go back to the problem with the Ahlul Kitab. That some of them, and again not mentioning all, lumping them all together, but the reason was that a group of the Ahlul Kitab, they had the knowledge. They were scholars. But when you look at their actions, it contradicted the knowledge that they had. And then another group of the Ahlul Kitab, the people of the scripture, when it came to actions, they were the most dedicated and they devoted their whole lives. But upon what? Upon something that was innovation, upon something that was introduced and was not mentioned in the scripture itself. And this is why you find today people saying things like Isa alayhi salam is the son of God and so on, where as Muslims, from the Muslim perspective, we understand that that is not the case. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla praises those people. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. These are the best of creation. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions specifically the reward that they will get. جَزَاؤُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Their reward with their Lord, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. These gardens that have rivers flowing underneath. This phrase comes back in the Quran time and time again. And many scholars, they say, why does Allah Azza wa Jalla mention this phrase so often in the Quran? There are many different explanations for it. One, and perhaps the best, is that this is the reality, that Jannah has these qualities. Another explanation that some scholars have given is they say, Allah Azza wa Jalla, in Jannah, there's many different aspects of Jannah. In reality, a person will have in Jannah whatever they want. But the Quran being revealed to Arabs who lived in the desert, this is something that they loved. When they hear about green gardens, when they hear about rivers, when they hear about these kind of things, it draws their attention more than saying just big palaces and so on. But again, the reasons are many, and also perhaps because the way that human beings are by nature, the way that we are created, who here doesn't love beachside property, right? Everyone loves to live by either the ocean or the river or something like that, and this greenery, the color of green itself, for many people, it represents life, it represents something that is fertile, something that grows, something that is alive. So all these things are mentioned in different aspects of the Quran, descriptions of how Jannah is. One thing that stands out to myself in particular is, if someone has something that is special, if you have something that is special, or if you enjoy a ni'mah, a blessing, right? Human nature is such that after a while you get tired of it. It becomes just like anything else. We've all experienced it. You buy a new watch, you're so happy, you keep looking at it every day, and then a week later, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long it takes, the watch becomes old and you get bored with it. And those are things in this hayat dunya, in this world. However, and it's easy to think, perhaps this will happen in Jannah. Perhaps, when Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا, that they will be in Jannah forever, maybe for a good portion of the time it will be interesting, it will be joyful and so on. But after a while, you'll get bored with it. But Allah Azza wa Jalla addresses even that. And in other parts of the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, لَا يَبْغُونَ عَنْهَا حِوَلًا لَا يَبْغُونَ عَنْهَا حِوَلًا, that they will not want a substitute or a change from this. And this shows that the description of Jannah that we are told in this world is just that, it is a description. The reality is different. And this is what some of the companions like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma used to say. He used to say that the similarity between this world, something as simple as a tufaha and an apple, the only similarity between the apple in this world and the apple in Jannah is only in the name. Here in the world we know it as an apple, and in Jannah it is known as an apple, but the reality of that is completely different. So when it comes to Jannah, yes, we're told about the gardens and the palaces and so on, but they're nothing like what we have experienced in the past. And this explains when the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says that Jannah is something that has not even come across the intellect or the mind of the bashar, of human beings. And people, they get confused. They say, well, I can imagine many things. Yes, your imagination is limited to the reality that you have experienced. When you're told a palace, you can understand a palace because we've seen palaces. But have you seen the palace in Jannah? It is different. So this is something that, as a Muslim, we keep in mind when we read about Jannah in the Quran. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. And there are many different verses that repeat this, both for Jannah and for now. Sometimes it says خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, and sometimes it adds خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. And it might seem redundant because khuld in Arabic is something that is eternal. And abad is also part of that eternal or that eternity. But this is to emphasize that they will be there forever and they will never be removed from Jannah. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, radiyallahu anhum, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has become pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. And subhanAllah, this is the thing that everyone is striving for. As children, we want the pleasure, we want the satisfaction of our parents. We look up to our parents. They say the first heroes that we have in our life are our father, our mother, and we look up to them. And we seek their praise and we seek their approval. Later on in life, we seek the approval of our teachers, the people who have taught us knowledge and so on. Perhaps we seek the approval of our spouses and we want to please them and we want to make them happy, and so that they are happy with us and we become happy with them. Now imagine having the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being pleased with you. This is a completely different level. And this is something that is not only reserved, we might think that it is only reserved for the companions. When we mention the name of a companion, we said, radiyallahu anhu, right? Just a dua. But here in the Quran, it tells us that this is not the only case. This is not only for the companions, but it is for those who believe in الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. These are for those people. And Allah explains it one step further for us to really understand that. The end part where it says, ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ خَشِيَ رَبَّهُ. That this, the pleasure of Allah, which is the greatest blessing, it is for the one who has khashiyah of Allah. And it's interesting that Allah Azza wa Jalla uses the word khashya here, which is fear, but it is a special type of fear. In Arabic, usually when they speak about fear, they use the word khawf. But now, this word khashya, it is a different type of fear. And the scholars have explained it. They said this type of fear, khashya, it only comes with knowledge. It is well grounded in knowledge. Khawf is something that is created. If you see fire, you know not to touch it. If you see a lion, you run the other way. But khashya, it is something that needs to really be studied, to really be understood. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That the only ones that have true khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ulama, those who have the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Excuse me. So, if we, in short, to summarize it, this last part, if you want all the things that have been mentioned, the Jannah, being praised by Allah, having the pleasure of Allah, entering Jannah, all these things that have been mentioned here towards the end, remaining in Jannah forever, you need to fulfill those conditions that were mentioned in the beginning and at the end. That you believe, that you follow up your belief with actions, and that you have this khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the flip side, if you want to save yourself, and protect yourself from the harm of Jahannam and being forgotten in Jahannam and being punished in such a way, then you need to take the necessary steps. And those necessary steps is the same that have been mentioned about the good people, because one brings the other. So you make sure that if you have knowledge, you act according to that knowledge. You try your best to stay away from the mistakes that people have done in the past, and you place your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you follow up with that ibadah that Allah Azza wa Jalla commanded, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ وَنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. All those aspects of the religion, you try your best to fulfill them. So this, in short, is a look into the tafseer of the surah, Surah Bayyinah. If you remember in the very beginning, we said that the beginning verse, لَمْ يَكُنِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ, this verse, many scholars have said it's the most difficult verse in understanding it in the proper way. So this is a complex surah with a lot of beauty, and it is one that a person should study and try to implement, just like all the other surahs in the Quran. So inshallah we'll stop here.